But I think that we have to call this for what it is. This is arguing over the size of government when it's big government. This is not getting rid of big government.
Buck, what you really touched on there was a number of things, and I want to try to unpack it a little bit. First off, you said that this was a shift. This is a shift in terms of what he's saying, but I don't believe it's a shift in what he believes. I think that this is really an expression of what Mitt Romney really thinks about his health care plan and what the people around him think about his health care plan.
Like in 2007 when they had that clip of him saying he wants it nationwide.
Exactly. Over and over and over again, we have seen the signals from inside the Romney camp that they think this was a great idea. Now, I want to talk about some other statistics, and I do want to say to the fine people at MittRomneyCentral.com, I'm sorry, but I disagree with some of your numbers. Okay?
There are arguments over the
But I just want to start off with this one. Massachusetts spends more per capita on health care than anywhere else in the industrialized world. That's from the Wall Street Journal, and it's something that is really not
more than the UK, more than Canada,
more than anywhere else
more than
per capita,
Switzerland.
More than anywhere else in the industrialized
per capita.
world. Per capita. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind about that system. This system was already extraordinarily expensive before Mitt Romney got there, and I think that he, of his own good intention,
and he's the governor of a very blue state that
tried to solve it. But I think that what you see when you look closer at RomneyCare is something that really has failed to meet the aims that he tried to achieve. And I think that the number one way that you can look at that is costs. Costs are 27% higher than the U.S. average, 15% higher when they're adjusted for the state's higher incomes. 8 out of every 10 people who've been added to the insurance rolls under RomneyCare are paid for by the taxpayer. They are paid for either in whole or in part by other taxpayers.
This is sort of like a statewide welfare program, is what it turned into.
What I really want to highlight here is this. Studies by Romney's own advisors, by Glenn Hubbard and by others who work for him, acknowledge that it raised the cost of premiums, that it raised the cost to the state. And right now, under its current track, by 2020, healthcare costs will make up more than 50% of the state budget. So here's the thing. My problem with RomneyCare isn't just that it's bad policy from the ideological perspective. It's that it didn't work. It didn't achieve his...
But here's the problem, Ben. He's not running against Ben Domenech. He's running against President Obama. And how is President Obama going to attack Mitt Romney that by enacting RomneyCare, it drove up the cost of healthcare? That
this is the point. He can't run away from this. He can't say that this is...
doesn't have a critic in his opponent. President Obama is going to have a very tough time attacking Mitt Romney that RomneyCare was a bad idea that drove up health care costs.
He can make a federalist argument here, right? That's what he has to do.
I think the other argument he could make, although it's thin, would be that given what it would have been had he not been there, given what you said, that it's already very expensive. Maybe premiums did go down from what they would have been had it been someone other than Romney.
And here's where that argument fails, because the policies that he set into motion have consequences. Right now, Deval Patrick has just passed essentially RomneyCare 2.0, and this is the way that they're dealing with the higher health care costs. They've created an 11-member panel of unelected bureaucrats, sound anything familiar to you, to essentially create a global cap on all
but you can escape this by going to New Hampshire, so it's inherently less odious than Obamacare.
You can't escape it, Buck. Here's the problem where federalism really breaks down. Within a few years, RomneyCare had run over budget, as all of these programs tend to do. And so Deval Patrick, the governor at the time, came down to Washington, D.C. to ask for more money, and he got it in the form of $4.3 billion more than they had initially requested from federal taxpayers. That means that all of us sitting at this table, we're paying for that. That's no longer
There's no way for him to make the argument that RomneyCare is better than you're saying. We're in a whole lot of trouble, because he can't just say get rid of Obamacare. That's not going to fly.
Well,
he has to have his own version of health care.
That's my concern.
There's so many other problems, though, in the new health care law passed by Obama. You know, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, for one, is a huge problem.
Sarah Palin's death panels, is that what you're referring to?
I'm not calling them death panels, but
you're being a responsible analyst.
It's a rationing ban.
Yes, to some extent. But anyway, there's lots of other problems. I mean, this is a 2,000-page bill, so why not criticize all the major problems? However, polls show that what people really didn't like about the new health care law was the one major thing that
the mandate
that can be compared to what Romney did.
Which the Supreme Court has now said is constitutional. But getting back to my point, Ben, all the arguments you make against RomneyCare, Those were GOP primary arguments, correct?
Yes.
But we are now in the general. So
Except
who
Mitt
is going
Romney's
to
holding
raise
this up
these
as
issues?
a good thing.
Yeah.
He's
Who's
holding
going to
this
raise
up
these
as
issues
a good
against
thing.
Mitt Romney?
Well,
Who's going to say Mitt Romney, it didn't
Ben
work in
is holding
Massachusetts?
healthcare up in Massachusetts as though it's against the best plan imaginable. I mean, it's imperfect. Of course it's going to be imperfect. It's a very liberal state. This is what the state legislator wanted. Mitt Romney signed this into law. But there is a clear difference here. I mean, we talked a little bit about the federalism argument that you can make, and I think it's absolutely key to making that distinction for Mitt Romney going forward. But look, I mean, this puts it on he can say that we're putting things on a free market trajectory. The same way that what we're trying to do with Medicare is to put it on a free market trajectory. It's not going to be free market tomorrow. It's not going to be perfect tomorrow. We can't hold ourselves against perfection. But if we hold ourselves to this has to be exactly the way Friedrich Hayek would want it the next day, you're going to lose the election. Then you have Obamacare.
I think you're completely right. I think this argument played out in the primary, and I think Mitt Romney won this argument, and he essentially won it and is now staking his claim to what he really thinks is a good policy.
And he had another problem, which is he couldn't be seen as a flip-flopper. He already had too many flip-flops.
As if that stopped him
Couldn't have
so
one
far.
more.
But it's still going to haunt him,
The thing, though, that I think we have to understand here is, and what is concerning to me, is what this indicates about how he plans to replace Obamacare. What he really plans to bring in terms of, and that's not the Ryan plan, that's about Medicare. This is about how we're going to reform healthcare policy going forward, where we all agree that changes need to happen. And then the concern that I have, essentially, is that the way that he dealt with this in Massachusetts was by creating a gigantic taxpayer-funded entitlement, which disincentivized success, which added all sorts of tax.
But the electorate likes giant taxpayer-funded entitlements.
They do. And
what I'm talking about, Ben, is reality. What you're talking about is what people in a think tank would devise as the perfect healthcare system.
But the U.S. Congress is not the Massachusetts state legislature.
So let me ask you.
If the state of Texas doesn't want this, they don't have to have a ROMNEYCARE affiliate. They don't have to do anything like that. I mean, that is a key and core difference that I think should resonate with conservatives.